Bridget's announcement hit like a thunderclap. The paternity test results, long speculated, whispered about in closed-door meetings and family gatherings, were finally confirmed, and the fallout was instant. Will Spencer was officially excluded as the father of Luna's child. The sterile clarity of the DNA document did more than shift biology. It detonated every carefully constructed alliance surrounding the baby. A single sheet of paper turned whispers into war. The moment the envelope was opened, the silence in the room was unbearable. Katie's mouth fell open. Bill turned away, and Luna, already clutching herself tightly, closed her eyes as if bracing for a blow. But it was Finn who stepped forward, not with shock but with purpose. Without waiting for consensus, approval, or consultation, he filed paperwork that same day. A petition for kinship adoption. His stated reason: the child deserved a stable, trauma-free environment, something he believed only he and Steffy could provide. In his filing, Finn included psychological assessments, character references, and a preemptive custody plan. It was methodical, strategic, and deeply personal. Steffy backed him, fully, unequivocally, but with hard lines drawn. She set immediate conditions for any arrangement involving the child. The baby would not carry the biological mother's surname. The baby would not have contact with Luna's maternal relatives. And there would be no unsupervised visits. No legal loopholes. No sentimentality clouding what she believed was necessary to protect her household. Ridge, informed over breakfast at the Forrester mansion, stood by Steffy. He had long seen the chaos Luna's presence brought into Finn's life. Her tangled past, her unclear motivations, the looming shadow of her mother's criminal record. None of it, in Ridge's eyes, spelled fit to parent. His support for Steffy wasn't just as a father. It was as a man determined to safeguard the Forrester name from further scandal. But Brooke took a different position. Visibly stunned by Steffy's conditions, she aligned herself with Bridget and Finn, not out of blind loyalty, but out of principle. Brooke believed in redemption. She believed people could rise above the sins of their past, or their parents. And most of all, she believed Luna's child had the right to know their roots. Bridget, torn between her Hippocratic duty and her emotional investment, stood beside Brooke in advocating for transparency, fairness, and what she called emotional truth. This fracture reignited old battles. The Forrester-Logan peace that had been carefully held together by years of compromise began to crumble. Boardroom meetings at Forrester Creations turned cold. Family dinners were canceled. Texts went unanswered. The matriarchs didn't speak openly, but their stares across the office hallways said everything. The tension reached its peak in court. Inside the family courtroom, where reputations went to die, both sides brought their full arsenal. Finn's legal team leaned on his career as a surgeon, his spotless criminal record, his stable marriage, his already established relationship with the child. His arguments were airtight, but the prosecution, representing the interests of the state and the child's biological rights, hit back hard. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecutor unfolded a confidential file and laid it on the judge's desk. It was the case file of the child's maternal grandmother, Sheila Carter. Convicted felon, accused of multiple homicides, attempted murder, kidnapping, and manipulation spanning decades. Her blood was the child's blood. That fact alone, the prosecution argued, placed the child at risk. Not biologically, but socially and psychologically. What if Luna, untested and unpredictable, followed the same path? What if Sheila's influence resurfaced? Finn's face tightened. The mention of Sheila struck nerves in every corner of the room. Ridge looked down. Steffy glared across the aisle. Brooke's lips parted, as if to object, but no words came. Luna wasn't in the courtroom. Her presence had been deemed too emotionally volatile. But her absence was used against her. She didn't even show up to fight, the opposing counsel argued. That is not the instinct of a fit parent. The judge took a long pause before speaking. Then came the ruling: temporary custody would be granted to Dr. John Finnegan for 30 days, pending further psychological evaluation of Luna and full review of Sheila Carter's influence on the child's environment. No visitation rights were granted. Luna was not to make direct or indirect contact during this period. The court's decision was firm. And so was the beginning of a new war. Cliff House, once a home built on love, intimacy, and healing, now became the epicenter of what the tabloids quickly dubbed the custody siege. Day 1. Steffy reorganized the entire home. Baby monitors installed, security reinforced, every photo of Luna removed. Beth and Kelly were kept away from the nursery, creating subtle but powerful divisions within the house. Finn, still hopeful that Steffy might soften, tried to include her in bedtime routines. But Steffy grew cold. This isn't our child, she snapped one night. Not yet, and not like this. Day 4. Brooke arrived unannounced, demanding a private conversation with Finn. She pleaded with him to consider what cutting off Luna completely would do to the child one day. Finn listened, but his face betrayed nothing. When Ridge found out about Brooke's visit, he confronted her publicly at Forrester Creations, reigniting tensions from decades past. "You always side with chaos when it's convenient," Ridge growled. "And you always cover cruelty with control," Brooke shot back. Day 9, Bridget, emotionally exhausted, offered to mediate. She suggested supervised visits, monitored through third-party professionals, as a compromise. Steffy vetoed the idea before it was even finished. "This isn't a therapy experiment," she said. "This is my life. My children's safety. My home." Day 12. The child, caught in the center of all of this, started crying more, sleeping less. Finn noticed. He brought it up with Steffy. She said nothing. Later that night, he found Steffy watching old videos of their wedding on her phone. Tears she would never admit staining her cheeks. Day 15. Luna released a private letter through her attorney to Finn. In it, she didn't beg. She didn't fight. She simply told him she would wait, and that she believed her child would someday want the full truth. She signed it, not with anger. Only love. Day 21. The media got wind of the custody war. Forrester family fractures over baby bombshell, one headline read. Blogs speculated about the return of Sheila. One even suggested Finn was genetically drawn to chaos. Paparazzi staked out Cliff House. Steffy had to move Kelly and Beth to a private estate. Day 27. A CPS counselor visited Cliff House. Her report, filed under seal, noted tension among the caretakers, lack of warmth in secondary caregiver, and a risk of long-term attachment issues if the situation remains adversarial. That line alone would come back in the next court hearing. Day 30. Everyone returned to court. The courtroom was fuller now. Cameras outside, journalists lined up, every seat occupied. Hope sat silently in the back. Liam stood beside her. Katie and Bill appeared but didn't speak. The judge reviewed the findings slowly, meticulously, then looked up. "No final decision today," she said. "But I will say this, raising a child is not about punishing its origins. It is about confronting them with honesty and overcoming them with love. I will order mediation, supervised contact with the biological mother, and a full psychological profile of both households. You may prepare your counsel." Gasps. Whispers. Ridge gritted his teeth. Steffy's jaw tightened. Brooke closed her eyes in relief. Finn exhaled. The judge's final words echoed like thunder. "This court is not here to preserve legacy. It is here to protect life. And this child's life must be more than a battlefield." As the families exited the courtroom, the air was thick with war still to come. The next 30 days would decide not just custody, but the future of the Forrester legacy, the fate of a child born from 1,000 secrets, and whether love or power would shape what came next. The storm hadn't passed, it had only begun. Bill Spencer had never been a man to back down from a fight, especially when it came to blood. When the court excluded Will as the biological father of Luna's child, most assumed that was the end of Spencer involvement. Most people underestimated Bill. He didn't just see the baby as a loose end. He saw it as an unanswered question. A potential Spencer heir caught in a custody game that was quickly turning into a Forrester monopoly. And Bill Spencer didn't lose heirs. The morning after the ruling that granted Finn temporary custody, Bill launched a full-scale legal offensive. He summoned his legal team, one of the most ruthless in California, to the Spencer Tower before dawn. By noon, they had filed a motion to reopen the DNA testing process, citing chain of custody irregularities and inconsistencies in lab documentation. Privately, Bill wasn't entirely convinced Will was the father anymore. But he was convinced of something else. The Forresters had moved too quickly, too aggressively, and without input from the other half of the child's potential lineage. That wasn't just personal, that was war. Bill's team didn't stop with DNA. They dug into Cliff House, the supposed safe haven Finn and Steffy were building around the child. Bill had his investigators compile a dossier. Photos, neighbor reports, even thermal mapping of nighttime routines. He collected records of Steffy's past substance use, her hospitalization after shooting Sheila, the on and off custody battles over Kelly, Finn's history with Luna, including the previous mental health incidents and the Sheila Carter connection, were documented in bold. Bill's message was clear: if you want this baby, you better be perfect. And they weren't. Meanwhile, Katie Spencer tried to be the voice of reason. She visited Brooke, sat with Steffy, and even met with Ridge privately in hopes of building a bridge before the conflict deepened into something irreversible. But from the very beginning, her efforts were seen as biased. Ridge accused her of acting as Bill's mouthpiece. Brooke snapped at her in a board meeting when Katie suggested neutral mediation. Even Bridget, who had tried to stay neutral during the earlier tests, expressed disappointment. You can't negotiate when one side brings missiles, she told Katie bluntly. As the new court date loomed, pressure mounted from every direction. The Forresters restructured their PR plan. Forrester Creations suspended all external communications for 72 hours to avoid leaks. The Spencers hired a media consultant and began planting strategic soundbites about a child's right to their true identity. Luna remained in hiding, reportedly under a doctor's care. And through it all, Finn stood at the center. Silent, stoic, carrying the weight of every decision made in his name. The hearing was scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. The courtroom was packed before 9:30. Ridge sat with Steffy on the left. Bill, flanked by lawyers, sat across from them. Katie, visibly uncomfortable, sat behind Will, who appeared quietly defiant, arms folded. Brooke and Hope sat between Bridget and Carter. Even Zende showed up. The room wasn't just full of people. It was full of fault lines. The judge began by acknowledging the Spencer motion, a request to retest paternity, a motion to evaluate environmental stability at Cliff House, and a motion to delay final custody determination pending a full lineage investigation. All three motions were technically sound. But what followed was the breaking point. Bill's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s named Vera Ransom, stepped forward and addressed the court. Your Honor, she said, we have no intention of removing this child from a safe home. But we cannot ignore the question of legacy or the integrity of bloodlines. If there is even a 2% chance this child is part of the Spencer bloodline, we must honor that possibility. Permanently placing the child in a household that has systematically excluded the mother's family and denied any paternal connection is not just dangerous, it's unconstitutional. Ridge leaned forward, about to object, but was waved off by Steffy's lawyer. Then Vera turned to Finn. Dr. Finnegan, may I ask you directly, do you believe the child deserves access to all sides of their biological identity? Finn didn't flinch. I believe the child deserves safety. Would you agree that safety includes knowing the truth about where they come from? Not if it compromises their well-being, Finn replied. Vera stepped back. Then let me ask you a simpler question, Drive. Finnegan, if you're forced to choose between honoring your wife's wishes or maintaining a lifelong connection with the child you've pledged to adopt, which do you choose? A stunned silence filled the room. Finn hesitated only for a second, but the weight of it rippled across every face in the courtroom. Then he said, voice even, I choose what's right. The explosion was immediate. Gasps, whispers, a sharp intake of breath from Steffy. Ridge's hand slammed the table. Bill leaned back, a satisfied flicker in his eyes. The judge banged the gavel for order. Let me clarify, the judge said. Dr. Finnegan, is your position that you may contradict your wife's wishes in pursuit of what you believe is right? For the child? I will always protect my family, Finn answered. Eyes locked on Steffy. But I won't pretend doing the right thing is negotiable. Outside the courtroom, news broke within minutes. Social media spun, I choose what's right, into a trending headline. Bloggers picked sides. Talk shows dissected the marital implications. Steffy was painted as the controlling gatekeeper. Finn was heralded as the moral rebel. But inside Cliff House, the fallout was far from theoretical. Every dinner became a debate. Ridge grilled Finn over wine, asking if his noble posture was worth destabilizing his marriage. Steffy accused Finn of undermining her authority as a mother. You made me look like a tyrant, she said one night, her voice cold. You gave them ammunition to call me unfit. I didn't say that, Finn replied. But I won't help you erase the mother's side of her story. Sheila was her mother's side. That baby is not Sheila, Finn said. And neither is Luna. Hope visited with Beth the next day. The tension was immediate. Steffy barely said hello. Hope offered gentle support to Finn, praising his courage in court. Later that evening, Steffy confronted Hope for praising treason under her roof. By week's end, the Cliff House felt less like a home and more like a courtroom annex. Security cameras were updated. Locks were changed. Ridge began sleeping in the guest wing during extended visits. Even Kelly asked, why are grown-ups always fighting? Finn didn't know how to answer. Meanwhile, Bill increased pressure outside the courtroom. He hosted a gala celebrating familial integrity and donated $2 million to a child advocacy charity, making sure the press tied his name to the custody battle. Katie refused to attend, finally admitting to Donna that she was starting to see the man I divorced. Will avoided his father completely. As the next hearing approached, whispers of compromise began circulating. Some suggested joint custody. Others pushed for a new, court-appointed guardian. But neither side wanted to blink first. Not Steffy. Not Bill. And definitely not Finn, because now, the issue wasn't just the child. It was identity. It was blood. It was legacy. And in a city where family lines double as corporate empires, doing what's right had never been more dangerous.